Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. This episode is actually a really big one for me. I don't think I mentioned this in past episodes, but my goal was to do 52 podcast episodes in 1 year. And today is that 52nd episode. So I am feeling proud of myself. It's not easy to get on here and share my opinion about deeply personal matters that you're dealing with or past experiences that I've had. As I'm reflecting on this last year, I can see how much courage it took and discipline to keep it going. So in a way, this is me modeling the thing that I'm trying to teach men to do, which is to set a goal and stay with it. Growing up, I was a super shy kid that talked very little. My dad would make jokes that Bryce is a man of few words when I was feeling nervous or shut down within groups of people. But that actually wasn't true. There was a lot going on in my mind, and it's taken me time to find my voice. And I think that's a struggle for a lot of men who had no education or understanding about their own emotional safety. How do we really ask for our needs? How do we stand up for what we believe in? How do we actually work through conflict when there are feelings on both sides? Getting vulnerable when we either want to shut down is a really tough move. So hopefully this podcast is helping you do that more and more in an informed and skillful way. You can change the dance with your partner and the people in your life. It's not a guarantee that those relationships will work out, but you don't have to be a victim to them, and you don't have to pretend to get by. With that being said, let's jump into the topic today. This one will probably hit home for a lot of you. What if my wife is feeling resentful towards me? Terry Real, a well-known marriage and family therapist who I trained with, even has a term for this. He calls it normative marriage hatred. Now, I know those are strong words, but I get a little laugh out of that term because for a lot of men that I work with, they have had the thought, man, I think my wife hates me, at least right now. That may or may not be true, but it can feel that way. And if your goal is to feel closer to your wife and build emotional safety, then her feeling resentful towards you is the exact opposite. It sucks. So let's break this down simply. If you sense that your wife is feeling resentful or she said as much, the first thing you want to do is assess. Did I do something? What's hers and what's mine? And this isn't a perfect science, but there are some clear dividing lines. If you went out of your way to have an affair, hide money, lie, or punch a hole in the wall, that's 100% yours. No one made you do that. No matter what was happening on her end or what was going on in your life, you didn't have to make that decision. And there is no justifiable reason that holds any water. If you want to start a new relationship, then end the one you're in. Do it honestly. You at least need to put all your cards on the table and see what your wife has to say about that. If you're hiding or lying, that's going to create deep cracks in the foundation of your relationship. In fact, subconsciously, people often do this as a way to get out of the relationship. They just sabotage it while they're in it. Maybe so their partner will end it with them so they don't have to feel the guilt of them ending it. Or there could be many other reasons. But that's the first part of the assessment. Where can you take 100% ownership? What's hers and what's mine? Now, on the flip side, if she did any of those things mentioned, that's 100% hers. She needs to take 100% ownership in order for you two to move forward. But here's the catch. Because relationships don't equate to perfect math, even if your partner is doing something that they are 100% responsible for, it's worth looking at how you got to that place. Because whether or not you stay with her, you don't want to repeat that pattern. You still want to reflect. What led me to choose this person? What signs did I miss? What did I do or not do that could have contributed to that outcome? If you weren't very emotionally available and she had an affair, that's 100% her. And it also gives you information as to how you're showing up in the relationship. And for more nuanced things, like projections onto you about how men are or how your family is, those can be more tricky. For instance, a common projection is that we will project our parents onto our partners. So if she's projecting her dad onto you and he was a man who wasn't emotionally available or emotionally abusive, you're probably going to have to really lock in to understand her while also paying attention to your own behaviors. There's good news and bad news here. The bad news is that she might be especially sensitive to things that might not bother some other people. It might be especially difficult for you. But the good news, as I see it, is that this will help you refine yourself and build more resiliency. In my relationship with Jenny, I'm continually realizing how sweet and sensitive she is. She can start to feel really scared and nervous in what I would call basic arguments. So whereas maybe I could have had a partner that wasn't afraid to fight back some, there could be pros and cons to that. I have to be especially attuned to her nervous system. And even though this can be frustrating, it has helped my attunement, patience, and compassion immensely. I have to really pay attention. The second part of the assessment is the question, what's a reasonable time frame and approach for repair? If it's something really big, there's a chance that it will never fully be repaired in the way that you want it to be, meaning that it's totally forgotten about. You might have to continually revisit this for years. It will pop up randomly. In my experience, there is rarely a good reason to resist this happening. You could think about it like a Chinese finger trap. Do you remember those things where you stick your finger in and even though they're made of like thin bamboo, they'll just lock onto your finger if you try to pull your fingers apart? I like this metaphor because to whatever degree that you resist this being a thing, it's going to become more of a thing. And then the thing becomes your resistance. Men have this bad habit of thinking that they can actually put the past in the past. And maybe you can to some degree with your own stuff. You could lock it in a box for a lifetime, but that doesn't work well in relationships. When we can trust that we can open our black boxes with each other, that builds security. So as far as time frame goes with assessment, I'd recommend leaving it open-ended. Sometimes small things can have a really big impact, and we won't really know why that is unless we stay with it. So that's the mindset, the approach that I would give you. The third piece of assessment is, what am I doing that's working or not? You can be purely objective here. When I drag my feet around going to individual therapy, my wife gets frustrated. Fact. When I blame her for feeling resentful, she gets more angry. Fact. When I say I will do something and then I don't, she feels frustrated. Fact. And on the flip side, when I say, I can see why you would feel that way, and I apologize for doing that, she relaxes. Fact. When I take better care of myself, physically and emotionally, I have more energy. Fact. So hopefully that helps with the assessment piece. And if you don't know what's working or not, you probably want to get a professional opinion. That's why I have a job. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening, the reasons for the resentment. I like to divide this into two categories, two polarities. The first one is that she has her blame arrow pointed inward. She feels neglected, unseen, lonely, and deep down, she probably feels like she's unworthy of love, of your love. She second guesses herself. She might try to contort herself at times to fit your needs. You'll probably notice that she does this with other people too. And this is all coming from desperation, even though outwardly it's going to look like anger. Maybe it's bottled up and it explodes. Maybe it feels too vulnerable to really go there, and anger is easier to express. At least she feels some strength in that. Side note, I really do think a lot of women are going through this metamorphosis where for so long, women have been oppressed by men. And on a bigger scale, I think they're generally tired of it, this patriarchal structure. And so, even though things are improving, as women feel more safe in the world, you're seeing that rage come up. It's one of those things where as our tolerance for bullshit goes down, sometimes we feel more. It's very counterintuitive, paradoxical. This also happens between couples. Maybe couples have put up with a lot of shit from each other for a while, and then they start to shut down. So the feelings are less present. They're kind of numb. And then when they want to change that, they start doing some work on it, confronting it. Now those feelings come back. Little things don't get swept under the rug anymore. They're pointed out. There's more fire. It's not a problem, but there can be a lot of intensity to that, and couples can struggle to hold it and know how to work with it. So I know that was a bit of a tangent, so I'll bring it back to the reasons. Again, the first reason, one side of the polarity, is that there's shame and self-blame going on inside. The other side of the polarity is that the blame is going outward. She's judging you for slacking, for hurting her, for ignoring her, for making her feel insignificant. There may be some grandiosity to her character. And I'll say the quiet thing out loud that some men feel: a woman in this place can be impossible to deal with. Just like there can be impossible men, there can be impossible women. If you submit, she's going to run all over you. If you push back, she's going to play the victim and come back even harder. And maybe this isn't as important because I'm talking about more extreme behaviors. Women are less likely, statistically, to exhibit these extreme narcissistic behaviors, but it can happen. And I guess I don't want it to get mixed up with the more normal behaviors of feeling generally one up. This just kind of gives you an idea of the spectrum. I also don't want to confuse you, because what I find with most women is that they've been conditioned to be more one down, even if they appear one up. So I'd pay more attention and orient to that experience that she may be having versus trying to label her as more of a one up. And if you're worried about how she's behaving, of course you want to get some support. I've heard stories from men of their wives taking their phone and throwing it across the room, or punching them in the shoulder, blocking the doorway so they can't leave. Those behaviors are not okay. Those are one up, grandiose. Even if it's coming from desperation, she's got to learn how to do that differently. You don't have to put up with that. But generally, what I see from men is that they struggle to feel into their own feminine, to soften, to slow down, to be open-minded. So for most of you, that's going to be where the work is, which leads me to my final point. What do you do if your wife is feeling resentful? If you're hoping for a magic trick, again, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The work is still the same. Work on you. You have to figure out what you're missing, where you can get more skilled, where you can grow your capacity for feelings. If possible, ask questions. And I know this might be difficult, but I suggest going into a conversation where you're trying to gather the best information. I suggest that you completely surrender into non-judgment. Set your stories aside. It's possible that you could be completely wrong. You might be building your own core story about who your wife is based on other stories that you also made up, because there can be many interpretations to be made around someone's behavior. For instance, I'll give you a common one. My wife doesn't want to have sex with me. Could create a story that she doesn't care about having sex with me. She doesn't really love me. And you'll build other stories to fortify that story. Now, a different story that you could try on is, what is my wife going through in her own life that is blocking that sexual desire? It might have nothing to do with me. Biology, child rearing, stress, menopause, political fear, and then there might be things that do have to do with you. Well, I used to get all grumpy when she was tired and I'd shut down. So now that whole conversation around being sexual is like scary, and it's difficult to feel sexual desire when we're scared. We need to feel open and relaxed. That could be something you did. One of the things you could do is ask, "How do you feel with me?" And then just listen. Another thing you could try is standing up for yourself more, not in a mean way, but in a more courageous way. And that could look like getting more vulnerable. It could look like standing up to your boss and having your wife see that because she's tired of you complaining about him. Women really do feel attracted to men when they're in their power, their grounded masculine power, because it shows them that they can protect her both physically and emotionally. If he can't protect himself, he can't protect her. So taking on a victim mentality, that really does the opposite for attraction. That's a turn off. Taking ownership is often a turn on for connection. Well, I'm just taking a deep breath here as I finish the last episode of this 1 year commitment. It feels good. I think I'm going to keep this going once a week, but I don't have a new goal. Thank you for being a part of the journey for whatever parts you tuned into. And if you need help, if you need a group, if you want to come out to St. George, Utah with 300 days of sunshine a year and plenty of outdoor activities to attend one of our retreats, I will include info in the description. That's all I got for today. I'll see you next week.